A giant clam can weigh up to 550 pounds. Giant clams grow to be about 4 feet in length. They live in the Indian and South Pacific Oceans. The exposed mantle, or soft tissue, of a giant clam features a combination of colors and patterns that can include yellow, green, iridescent blue, and purple. This species of clam is an omnivore eating tiny marine plants as well as animals in the form of zooplankton. The lifespan of this mollusk goes all the way up to 100 years. After attaching itself to a coral reef, this mollusk stays there for the rest of its life. The bright colors in this clam's mantle are caused by the algae in its system. There is a legend claiming that these clams are man-eaters, but this is not true. Many clams of this species live on the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia. This species has a conservation status of vulnerable. These clams have a thick, heavy shell with fluted edges that protects the mantle, or soft tissue, inside it. Its mantle is colorful, displaying patterns of brown, iridescent blue, green, yellow, and purple. The algae stored in this clam's body is what makes its mantle so colorful. An adult clam's mantle has pale spots on it known as windows. The size of these clams ranges from 4 feet to 4.5 feet in length. They weigh around 500 pounds. Picture 3 bowling pins lined up end to end and you have the length of a 4-foot giant clam. A 500-pound giant clam is equal in weight to half of a horse. The heaviest giant clam on record is 550 pounds. Another species of this sea creature is the southern giant clam. Its scientific name is Tridacna dorasa. Though it has a similar appearance to the Tridacna gigas, the southern giant clam measures just 2 feet in length. The sheer size of an adult giant clam as well as its thick shell serves as excellent protection against most predators. Furthermore, this clam can close its shell most of the way to protect itself from threats. An adult clam isn't able to snap its shell closed. After the clam attaches itself to a reef, it stays there for its entire life. These clams live in warm water habitats. Specifically, they are found in the South Pacific and Indian Oceans. They live off the northern coast of Australia as well as near the Nicobar Islands and Fiji. The Great Barrier Reef near Australia is home to many of these clams. They live in reef flats as well as in shallow, sandy areas of lagoons. They are usually found at a depth of around 65 feet. In an ocean, a depth of 65 feet is not very deep. Living in shallow areas allows these clams access to filtered sunlight. These clams are omnivores. However, since they are attached to a coral reef, they can't hunt for food. Luckily, the food comes to them. These mollusks have a siphoning system that takes in tiny prey that floats by. This siphoning system is similar to the filtering system in a backyard swimming pool. It may seem like the sheer size of this clam would keep all threats away. But this mollusk does have some predators. Reef fish, eels, and starfish eat the meat of the clam. Humans also harvest these clams to eat their meat. These clams feed on both plants and animals, namely phytoplankton and zooplankton. These clams have a siphoning system that takes in water along with tiny particles of food that pass by. Also, the clam gets nutrients including sugar and protein from the billions of particles of algae stored in its tissue. This is what is called a mutually beneficial relationship. The algae enjoy the protection of living in the clam's body tissue while the clam receives essential nutrients in return. These clams open their shell during the daylight hours to allow sunlight to filter in through the clear spots, or windows, in its mantle. Sunlight plays a part in the photosynthesis that feeds the algae. Eel, reef fish, and starfish eat the meat of these clams. When one of these predators takes a bite, it doesn't kill the giant clam. However, it does cause injury. Humans are another threat to this clam. People harvest these clams for their meat and shells. Specifically, the adductor muscle of a giant clam is considered one of the most delicious parts of this sea creature. These clams are especially popular cuisine in Japan, France, and throughout Southeast Asia. The larvae of these clams are eaten by fish, octopus, and crabs. These larvae are so small that thousands of them could be eaten by one large fish. This is the main reason why a giant clam releases so many eggs. It increases the chances some of them will survive to adulthood. Water pollution is another threat to these clams. Pollution can affect the rate of reproduction of these sea creatures. Each giant clam has both sperm and eggs. They reproduce by releasing both sperm and eggs into the open water. One giant clam can release 500 million eggs at one time. Eggs are fertilized by the sperm released by another giant clam. This is called broadcast spawning. The fertilized eggs hatch into larvae. Giant clam larvae circulate in the water looking for plankton and other tiny particles of food until they grow large enough to settle into one place near or on a coral reef. A developing giant clam goes through many stages. It starts out as an egg and hatches into larvae. After that, it develops into a veliger, a pediveliger, a juvenile, and an adult. Though it takes years for a giant clam to achieve adult weight and size, it has a lifespan of up to 100 years. So, it has plenty of time to grow into a 4-foot, 500-pound grown-up.